I am here with Mikael Dia, founder and CEO of Funnelytics. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to have you here today. You are working on a problem that is near and dear to my heart, and we will certainly dive into some rabbit holes around customer journeys and customer analytics.
I'm sure we will.
I would love to just hear a bit about you. What was it that made you decide you wanted to found a company?
Oh man. Okay. Yeah. So what made me decide to found a company? So Funnelytics is not my first company. I've been doing my own businesses and kind of my own thing for over a decade now. And basically my first real venture that saw any success and I kind of went down that was a Mandarin language school actually in London in the UK I did that and I was there for about 3 years. I don't speak Mandarin, by the way, so don't ask if you do. I've never even been to China, but still, we started a Mandarin language school, myself and a business partner. And really, what kind of started? So I'm an engineer like you, civil engineer actually, is what I studied at school. I have a master's in engineering. I actually also have an MBA as well. So I did a lot of school, and about 3 years into being an engineer, or 3 years into my engineering degree, I should say, I knew I didn't want to be an engineer. I also knew I didn't want to start over and go back to school and do another 4-year degree. So I finished my degree. I worked as an engineer for about 6 months. And what I would do for those 6 months, for like eight hours a day, first I lived in the city in Toronto and I would commute. And because of traffic being ridiculous, it took me about an hour and a half in the morning, an hour and a half in the evening to commute. And then for 8 hours, I would sit behind a computer and do AutoCAD drawings all day long of sewers and bridges and roads and just measuring it to the degree and so that we could print out these AutoCAD drawings. And, I hated it so much. I hated it. It was so bad. And I knew like I didn't want to be an engineer. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I stumbled upon, how to make money online type of sites. And I actually started researching it because I used to, my friends and I used to have t-shirts and we were trying to figure out how do you sell to strangers. So Googling how to sell stuff online puts you down a rabbit hole in 2009. And that is how I kind of started that journey. Mm-hmm. What made me really become an entrepreneur was, unfortunately, in 2009, my dad had an accident and a brain aneurysm and he was in the hospital for a while. And I remember with all these things kind of working at the same time, basically knowing that I want to be an engineer, learning a little bit about this whole internet marketing and digital marketing stuff and building online businesses, and then seeing how short life can be and how out of nowhere you could just basically it could be over. And those kind of things all combined made me say, there's no way I'm not building my own path and figuring out what it is that I want out of life in my own way. So
wow, that's powerful.
Yeah, that's the long answer to how I started becoming an entrepreneur.
That's great. I mean, it's especially that last one. My dad passed a couple years ago, and my mom is kind of on her way out as well, and that is something that I wouldn't say keeps me up at night, but let's just say it's something that I'm reminded of every day, especially when I'm with my kids and things like that. That just life is definitely too short to waste time doing something you don't love doing.
Totally. It is very, very, you realize how many people go through life in a routine. And it's funny, I was actually sitting down with my wife yesterday and we were like, I'd love to do this in New York or in Toronto or whatever, but imagine you just take one of these condo buildings that has, 50 floors or whatever. I would love to take off the facade of one of them and look into each apartment to see how bored people really are, right? Like they're not motivated. They're sitting there. They're either watching Netflix or they're scrolling because think most of us live in this routine of like up, work, paycheck, home, mind numb until do it again tomorrow. Right. And after realizing how short life is, you just kind of say, you know what, is that really how I want to do it? Or do I want to try to do something different?
Well, thankfully you learn that. You still look pretty young. So thankfully you learn that lesson young enough that, you've made the most of it. I think there's people that learn that lesson way too late.
Yeah.
It's never too late, but
it's never too late. It's never too late. I might look younger than I actually am. I'm 37. So I've got 2 kids. I've learned a lot of, over the years of, and it's not like building a business is easy, by the way. So it's not as though there aren't challenges going down that path too. Like I definitely understand the reason why some people would sit there and say, I do want to just have an easy life. And cause building a business is not, I
always like the mantra, you get to choose your hard, right? Being bored and miserable is hard.
Building a business is hard. You're 100% right.
Which hard would you prefer?
Very true.
So you had that entrepreneurial spirit. That's amazing. And one question I have about the Mandarin language school, what lesson did you learn building a business for a market you didn't know anything about?
I learned that fundamentally the principles of marketing are the same. You need to find somebody who has a pain and a problem or a desire, and you have to understand how to find where they are hanging out. And then you've got to create a process that turns them from a stranger who's never heard of your business, never heard of what you do, to an actual customer. Fundamentally, that process, that framework, those steps that you've got to consider are the same, regardless of if you go into e-commerce and it's everything about your market, or you go into digital marketing or whatever it may be, right? I think the main thing that it taught me was you still need to understand who is the buyer and why they're buying at the end of the day. I'm not the buyer. I'm certainly not. I've never learned Mandarin. I don't know anything about it, other than a few words as I was kind of doing it. But, even though I'm not, understanding why they're learning Mandarin, why they want to learn Mandarin, and touching on that is fundamentally part of the same process. So probably the biggest thing that I learned across that.
Amazing. So then what was the pain that you saw in the market that formed Funnelytics?
Oh, so that pain was my own pain. So the Funnelytics fundamentally was designed as a tool for myself. When I first designed it, it's evolved, to be way bigger and way broader than I ever imagined or thought, that people related to the same problem that I did. But when I was running my marketing agency, so after I sold the Mandarin school, I eventually started a marketing agency where we would do funnels for all of our clients. And basically, in short, we would do the full strategy. We would find out where are their customers, whether it's on Facebook or Google or LinkedIn or whatever. We would basically advertise to them. We would build the pages and the email sequences and the automations to try to convert these strangers into customers. And the way we would do this for our clients is we would basically map it on a whiteboard or some sort of diagramming tool. I would show them, okay, we have Facebook ads and we have Google ads, and they're going to go to this page, and then they're going to get their name and email. We're going to have these emails, and they're going to go over here. And I would draw this diagram of the path that people would take to become customers. And whenever we did that and we took a picture, we showed it to our client, we explained it, like a light bulb moment went off in their head of like, oh, I get that. This is why all these pieces are needed in order to make this thing happen. And then came reporting and analytics and trying to see, is this working? Is it not? We would log into Google Analytics, and then I'd log into Facebook, and I'd log into HubSpot or whatever is CRM, and I'd log into Stripe, and I log into this and build a spreadsheet, and I'd try to build data for Google Data Studio. And number one, my clients didn't care. They didn't really know what they were looking at. It's just like, is this working? Is it not? And then when things weren't working, my team was super confused. Like, okay, well, what do we do next? What do we try next, et cetera? And it all became kind of dependent on me. And one of the things that I started to realize is because strategy is done in one way, drawings, pictures, visual, and then you have to flip over to your left brain to start looking at charts and graphs and spreadsheets and numbers and try to tie this data together. And it's super confusing. So the thought process with Funnelytics was, wouldn't it be really cool if I could just like have a Miro style whiteboard, like just a digital canvas? I could map every customer touch point on there. I could connect them together, and then I could just overlay all of the data right there. So I could see, oh, there's 1,500 people that landed on this page, and 20% of them went this way, and another 15% went this way. And then I could just understand, how do people get to this end goal that I'm trying to get to, whether it be a purchase or a lead. And fundamentally, that is how Funnelytics came to be as an idea. And that is what we built. We built a digital whiteboard that allows you to map all of your customer touch points, but then put all of your data on top and understand how people are flowing through all these customer touch points.
That's super cool. So, I actually spent a lot of my career working on this problem. I spent almost 10 years in the analytics space, but working in big tech, on many different problems, not just, focusing on customer journeys. But in my consulting business, I have always been this evangelist of human-centered design, and mapping the customer experience and the customer journey is sort of the fundamental way to create products in that way. So I always wanted to be able to tie back to, well, what's the reality, right? We've drawn the customer journey. We have this idea of how customers are supposed to be making their way through our product or our ecosystem, but what's really happening? And so I actually, as a consultant, was doing most of what you're doing, what you talked about, pulling data from all these different sources, running SQL queries, putting everything into spreadsheets, trying to build dashboards and these various tools. And needless to say, it was very clunky. It was very expensive. And the only folks, and it was slow too. It took a long time. So they couldn't get that data quickly enough to make kind of the rapid, agile decisions that they needed to make.
Yep.
So, it really only made sense for larger companies. Then some players started to try to create this sort of holistic view of the funnel. But then they got so convoluted and complicated that, again, they started becoming these enterprise platforms. So when you have folks like Pendo, who were on the show recently, Flurry Analytics and Mixpanel and these other tools that try to kind of visualize the whole customer journey, they start adding so much stuff onto it. And then they go, oh, well, now we're so expensive that only enterprises can afford us. So there was never really a good solution, especially for startups, to be able to affordably visualize the entire customer journey. And then the other thing you do that's pretty cool is, it's not just about the data that's happening within your product. It's actually connecting it to our advertisements, right? So somebody clicks on an ad, and then they come to a landing page, and then they sign up for our app, and then they go through the flow, and then they engage in these emails and all these sorts of things. All of those different data points, you can never track them completely through, through the entire journey. So it's anyway, super cool. That's why I wanted to have you on the show.
Yeah, well, it is. It's certainly not an easy challenge. I can tell you that much from both an engineering standpoint and a just data privacy and all that stuff in general. What's interesting though, about what you said and moving into kind of the enterprise space, after running an analytics-based business for the last, 5 years, I understand why, right? Fundamentally, the people who need analytics are kind of the smaller businesses who really need to optimize marketing spend, who really need, that ROI to be high. On the flip side, though, they don't have any analytics minded people on their team. So usually now you have the founder, or you have maybe somebody who is a marketing coordinator or something like that. Maybe they come from a social media background or a content background. So even though we help visualize data in a much more easy and to understand way, it's still data at the end of the day. It's still numbers. And if you are number minded, and then it's great to sit there and say, hey, like I want to be data driven, but I don't even know how. So there's that aspect of, if you don't have that person in house who understands performance just in general, you're going to have a challenge. So instantly it puts you at a tier above, because in order for me to be able to hire a performance minded marketer, I'm probably already spending and making quite a significant amount of money. And then the second is, do I even have enough data to make data driven decisions? One of our biggest challenges at Funnelytics has been, having so many people come in with that mindset of, I want to be data driven. And then it's like, well, okay, great. But you only had 100 people come to your site over the last 2 months. Like, there's not much you can do with that to make some decisions and to try to improve. Like, it's just, you're at a stage where like, are you making money? Like, so in that mindset, I understand why a lot of these businesses have moved towards higher level enterprise. It is really, really, really hard to reduce churn or keep churn sustainable on an analytics product in the small business space. So
yeah. Well, so most of my clients are kind of growth to scale stages. Yeah. So they're definitely more than 100 visitors or 50 visitors a month or whatever it is.
Right.
But clients ask me all the time, like, when is the right time to really invest into analytics? And it's as soon as possible. It's
100%.
Whatever you're doing now, you need to do more than what you're doing now. Right. I've
100%.
never met a company who actually went completely overboard with it and wasn't able to get the ROI on it. It's really just a matter of, can you do it efficiently? Can you do it quickly? Is the data timely enough? Is it accurate?
Yep.
And that's where, again, the costs tend to stack up, but that's where, again, a platform that can do it and do it simply, you're simply enabling smaller companies to be able to do that.
Yeah. And fundamentally with Funnelytics, we've always like, we experimented with bigger companies and just to see what enterprise looks like. And it's not the game we want to play. At the end of the day, we enjoy servicing and helping smaller businesses, small to medium sized businesses, who can really make an impact where, I'm not spending, hundreds of millions of dollars on branding plays that ultimately it doesn't even make a difference. This car sells more or not. Like for us, the way we love to look at it, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been doing this for a long time. So the way we look at it is, if I can help you get insights to optimize your marketing, right? To basically spend, not increase how much you spend, but make more from what you are spending, then it's a win-win. So it's more fulfilling for us as a company to work with the smaller businesses.